Hi you guys, welcome back to my page. So today I'm going to be talking more about adoption, and specifically today I'm going to be talking to you about how we made the decision to adopt internationally versus foster care or domestic adoption. So when you come to the decision to adopt, you have to choose where you are going to be adopting from. And for our family, when we were choosing to adopt, we didn't really know where we were going to adopt from. So we really didn't know where to start. We didn't really know who to ask. And so we really just started with prayer. So we came to the decision to adopt internationally, and we had several stories where God really just used our past to really kind of confirm the direction He wanted us to go with this adoption. So my husband and I really, we've always had a heart to adopt. It was something we always had talked about within our marriage, and we were just always praying about when adoption would be a way for us to grow our family. It was just a matter of when. It wasn't if. It was just, where's it going to fit? Are we going to adopt first and then have our own kids, our biological kids after? Are we going to have our kids first and then adopt last? Are we going to have biological kids and then adopt in between? And we really didn't have any plans except to pray about this throughout our entire marriage. And we ended up having our kids really early on in our marriage. We weren't sure how healthy we would be or if we'd be able to conceive any kids. We didn't know. So we were young, and we had 3 healthy kiddos. We have 3 healthy kiddos with us, and we have 2 angel babies that passed within the last 2 years. And so we have them also. And they are part of our adoption story as well, and part of our family story. And so we really chose an international adoption versus a domestic or a foster care adoption, basically because in the last 2 years, so in 2018, we had a miscarriage at 13 weeks, and then we ended up having a stillborn son. His name is Amos, and I'm sure I'll post more stories about him also and how he has been a part of our story. So we had those losses, and so between those losses, we had really been just praying about how we would grow our family next. And we had experienced some kidney stones and things like that. And so we just knew it wasn't the best time for us to necessarily have any more children on our own. Although we don't have any issues with infertility, thankfully, we just wanted to give my body a little bit of time to rest. And so we knew with the losses that we had in our family, we prayed about foster care. That's something that was really near and dear to our hearts. Our family, we own several businesses in North Iowa, and a lot of the mission of our businesses is to really just manifest the gospel to youth in our community. And so within the last 10 years, we've really been able to do that. And so we've really been able to reach a lot of children and reach their families and just build relationships with them within our local community. So we really felt like we were already doing that work, not necessarily within the foster care system, but more locally. Like the foster care system is more local. It can be more farther away. It doesn't just have to be in Iowa. We understand that, but we really felt like we had already been meeting some of those needs, and we also really believe in reunification with kids and families. So we really didn't think that after the 2 losses we had, we really want permanency. We really feel like just discipling children in our home and loving on them permanently is the best way that we want to grow our family. We didn't want to get too attached to a child knowing that we want that child to go back to their family, and we just weren't in that position. So we wanted permanency, so we thought that foster care definitely wasn't an option for us, at least this time around. That doesn't necessarily mean that we won't be adopting through foster care in the future. That just wasn't our path this time. And then we didn't necessarily need to have like an embryo adoption because we didn't need to conceive, and we chose not to do a domestic adoption because domestic adoption is mostly infants and newborns, and we didn't necessarily need an infant or a newborn in order to bring a child into our family. So we knew that that wasn't necessarily the route. And then there was international adoption, and international adoption has always been something on our hearts, and we just never knew a country. However, the Lord had always been planting these little seeds and breadcrumbs to help guide our path into the country that we chose. But we didn't know it until we actually were accepted into the program. And then it was like, wow, Lord, you really had provided all of these situations to lead us to the India program. But before we knew we were adopting internationally, we had been sponsoring a child through the Fishana Orphanage in Ukraine. We have a missionary friend that goes to our church, and she was going to sponsor or help sponsor these children by providing these prayer cards for families to take home and pray. And so we had considered adopting after our third was born, and so we were planning on going to an adoption conference. And at that same time, it was like at the end of 2017, we decided to start praying and sponsoring this little boy from the Fishana Orphanage, and we were given this little prayer card from our friend and missionary from the Fishana Orphanage in Ukraine. So we had been praying for this boy for the last year and thinking that we were going to be adopting after our third was born, and he's now 5, but at the time he was 2. And so this was at the end of 2017. We'll fast forward into early 2017 into 2018. So we found out we were pregnant. So we found out in November we were pregnant, and then we carried that baby for about 12 weeks, and that was our first miscarriage. And that was about, I think, a 12 or 13 week pregnancy. And then we ended up getting pregnant again 6 months later and carried that baby until 18 weeks. And so we lost that baby, unfortunately, at 18 weeks. But that same day that we came home from our funeral service that we had for our son, we ended up getting an email from our church. There's an email update or email thread that we get from church families that send prayer requests and things like that, from a family who was adopting a sibling set from Ukraine. So I decided to look at it. And on there, I ended up finding a picture that looked similar to the boy that we had been sponsoring. So I ran over to the refrigerator and I grabbed this picture and I brought it over. And lo and behold, this little boy was the very boy we had been praying for over the last year, and he was going to be adopted. And not only was he going to be adopted, but he was going to be adopted into a Christian and loving family. He was going to know Jesus, and he was going to be moving to our town. And so we just couldn't believe, we were floored that the Lord, in the midst of our loss, was bringing life and family to this child that we had been praying for. So that really just set our hearts to this idea of adoption. And the Lord just had orchestrated all of these events in our life, not just that one, but many other ones, to make us really think about adopting. And we ended up pursuing this adoption in November of last year, and we didn't know which direction, but after we found out that this child that was adopted internationally came home, we really felt like international adoption was for us. We just weren't quite sure where, but we have a friend that lives next door, and he's an Indian doctor, and he is a specialized doctor in ears, nose, and throat, and India is a special needs program. Didn't know that at the time, but we have friends that are next door from India, and I have a good friend from MOPS. Their family, they have Indian children. And then my dad just moved to Naperville, Illinois, and we went to go visit, and we found out that there is an Indian Christian church across the street, and it's one of the largest communities for Indian American families, which we didn't know because we weren't even paying attention to that until, we would drive around and we would see all these Indian restaurants. There's an Indian mall, there's all these Indian shops and restaurants and things like that. And so when we were accepted into the India program, it was just a no-brainer for us to go with the India program. So that's how we chose to go with an international adoption, and specifically in the India program. And in the next video, I'll share with you on how do you apply to be in a program, how do you choose which program is for you, because really the program chooses you. And no matter how much we loved India, India had to accept us first. So there's lots of different programs out there, and I'll share with you how we actually applied and got into the program and how to kind of narrow it down between countries. So stay tuned for that.